Hey, everybody. Here we are. We're back. And we're live. Welcome back, Marisa. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. This is awesome. I'm so excited. I had a great time last night, and tonight we're going to focus a little more on, the present. And everyone is dying to hear your input on what is going on in this whole crazy ex-Scientologist space. And yeah, so here we are, and I'm so glad that you told your story, some more of your story last night, because I know I learned a lot more than I didn't know about you, and I'm glad that others were able to hear your story as well. So here we
Thank you.
are.
Put my phone or my hand up like this. We were having a little difficulty with this. I got a new phone, people, and it is like this weird thing. So I guess if I put like the microphone up by my mouth,
It's better.
everyone fine. So if
You're
I'm
like a
going like,
news reporter.
yeah, if I'm acting like a news reporter, like, all right, Marilyn, it's your turn. Here, then that's I have to hold this microphone lip my hand. Oh my God, it's annoying, but oh well. And yeah, I'm glad to be back, people. Yesterday was, we talked for a long time. I know it was over 2 hours, and I think it was like what we were supposed to talk about today was going to be a serious discussion yesterday about everything going on, the Mike Render situation and all of that. But Marilyn, I think she's like an old soul. So being able to talk to her, I'm like, oh my God. And yeah, so we just were talking about, I guess, my life and cults in general, because I find her cult fascinating. And, she's interested in Scientology. So yeah, I guess that's what it boils down to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like, we, like, laid the groundwork. We kind of, presented, like, where each of us are coming from, and, you know, we're in this space, and I'm glad, like I said, that people got to hear your story and a little bit of mine, and I feel like, we can relate to each other, and we're building our own type of community, and yeah, I like I like what's happening. I like that there's new and different and even older not that you're old, but some voices that have been around for a while that are coming back, and I'm here for it all. I feel like, no one should be left, out in the cold, and uh I want to hear everyone's point of view. So I know
Thank
a lot of people just love your honesty. That's very refreshing, and just you tell it like it is, like the title says, and I'm here for it. Absolutely. And a lot of people are here for it as well. We already have 62 people, and we just started, which is amazing. We've got Kelly Copter.
Help
She's up
me,
she's up late. We got Cricket.
Cricket.
Hi,
Yay.
Cricket. We've got the inappropriate heifer. I love her.
Oh, I
Oh,
like that.
unplug it and plug it back in. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened, right? And we got a lot of people coming in. Good golly, Miss Molly, is it? Nicole, Layla, or Leah, Rachel, all kinds of people. We got our fabulous mod, Miss Sunrise Dawn. She moderates for us. Super
Today
Pop, hello.
is a serious day, serious time.
Yes. So, hey guys, so send us your questions and comments. If you can put comment or question in all caps so I can see it, because I don't have anyone in StreamYard starring questions. So, yeah. So here we are. Grouchy Mama Bear. Oh, love this. Love you
Yeah.
ladies in these discussions. Grouchy Mama Bear.
Hey,
So,
grouchy. Don't
yeah, I love me some Grouchy Mama
anyone
Bear. I can relate.
with anything. You don't want to mess with them.
Exactly. Exactly. So, what are your thoughts? I know someone asked last night about Mike Render's blog post, but you can start wherever you want. If you'd like to start with your experiences, years ago with the Aftermath show, we could start there. Anywhere you want to go with it.
All right. Well. And I'm sure there's some like body reader experts out there that are like, she's touching her hair and she's
Oh, I
doing
touch my
this.
hair all the time. Who cares?
Uh, so, it is a serious subject matter. And honestly, it took me by surprise, to tell you the truth, because Mike Render, you know, he's, as you know, since the Aftermath show began, has kind of been like King Almighty. And I would say predominantly it's because he lucked out and he got a very glorious golden ticket from Leah Remini. So I look at Mike Render as a matter of luck, pure and simple, because what he has done and things he's said over the years, you guys, it's honestly been nothing spectacular. Let's just be honest with ourselves. Um, I had a talk with my mother today, very briefly, and I've told people time and time again how, my mother was declared, and she used Marty and Mike Rinder sort of as like her guiding light to navigate through the process of being declared from like the Church of Scientology, the organizational part with David Miscavige.
Mhm.
She spent 30 years in, both of my parents did. So when she got declared, and there were like a lot of people around that time frame that, people that have been declared, that got declared. It was almost like this massive exodus that I guess it was David Miscavige on a rampage of like, we're going to declare as many SPs as possible. And the around the time frame that this was when the internet was sort of new and exciting, like the beginning of MySpace.
Mhm.
All it was still new. Getting into chat rooms was still kind of cool, and nowadays it's like, oh man, almost like a chore sort of.
Right.
But
Was it the
mm,
early 2000s? Like the early
um
2000s kinda?
say like the mid
Mid
2000s
2000s,
is,
like 2005, 6?
yeah, I
Mhm.
putting my hand down with my mic.
Sorry.
Um
You sound
I
good.
asked I asked my mother today. I said, "Hey mom, when were you declared?" Because I'm trying to put like a timeline to when I started getting interested in anti-Scientology stuff and figuring things out for me. So if you can tell me when you were declared, that really would help me put a time frame together. And yeah, my mom she brought her goldenrod out. My mom, she's one of the ones that got a goldenrod. I hear Lara FM talk about that a lot. The goldenrod when you're declared an SP. My mom
Yeah, I
received.
I bought some goldenrod paper, and I write my notes on it.
Oh, girl, you are just a hoot. I swear.
You
Um,
can order it on Amazon.
wow. When my mother was declared back in 2005, I'm trying to remember how old I was. So I was probably, I don't know, maybe like 17, or no, no, no. I was a little older than that. I was probably 23, I'm guessing, or 24. Um, so my mother was like, yeah, I was declared in 2005. And I do remember this. She's like, yeah, of all times, they declared me on Christmas Eve. And I do remember this. We were having a Christmas Eve dinner, and they sent people from the Phoenix org to deliver a goldenrod to my mother
Wow.
on Christmas Eve. It's like,
Wow.
what a Christmas present. Like, hey, you spent 30 years of your life dedicated to this organization, and boom, we're giving you the boot. Merry Christmas. And I've heard other people discuss this where it seems like the Church of Scientology, they like doing this to be dicks, basically. They will pick important holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, where they will give these like declaration notices.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, my mom received hers on Christmas Eve, so 2005. And in 2006, she kind of got involved with, she wanted to continue Scientology with L. Ron Hubbard, but the way, the whole KSW saying keep
Keep
Scientology
Scientology
working.
working.
Yeah, with what L. Ron Hubbard made, like his original writings and working. Um, which is what the free zone and independent movement was about. And there's actually a list. It's called the Indy 500, like the car race
Right.
or whatever. Now you
Yeah.
could look this. It's called the Indy 500 Scientology list, and it's
Mm.
the first 500 people that were declared suppressive people. And they made this list, people that went on to become independent Scientologists. And that list is really fascinating because it has a lot of big name people on there. Some of them are no longer Scientologists. I do want to reiterate that. Some of them, like, some good friends of mine, they are not a part of that at all. But I understand it was sort of like a stepping stone from the organizational David Miscavige Scientology to transforming to the beliefs that you've believed almost your whole life. So eventually you get to a point where you're like, all of this is bullshit, you know? So
Yeah.
my through that little transformation period. Um, so from 2006, 2007, 2008, everything was MySpace. You know, I was on MySpace all the time. The anonymous movement was very heavy into the MySpace movement.
Really? I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, it was, because Facebook, I think, began in 2007 and it didn't really hit the States predominantly as a big social media.
Oh, I lost the
For
sound. There we go.
Yeah, okay, somebody was trying to call in, but
Yeah, I can hear you.
um Facebook did not hit the scene as a big social media platform till probably 2008 in the US. Um if that makes sense. So a
Mhm.
lot of people were doing MySpace. What's that guy's name? Tom, the MySpace guy. So all of my ramblings of figuring myself out and in being involved in the anonymous movement in the beginning, it was all on MySpace. And my mom was joining Free Zone, the independent movement. Now, when I remember MySpace back in like 2006 to 2008, I do remember the Headleys. They were doing it since the MySpace era. I will give them
Mhm.
credit for that guy David Love, who I had a horrible incident with that
Mhm.
framed me in the film. He was doing that. But it was just me, and I was trying to find other second gens like myself, and it was really hard back then because there really weren't any out there, at least publicly
Right.
speaking, I should say.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to, gosh, put this in like a short, it's such a long story, the whole history of this. But my mother was really involved in the free zone movement, independent movement. And I was on MySpace. I started joining the anonymous movement. And I remember my sister was still the executive director of the Phoenix org. And by me posting on MySpace that I'm going to these protests and anonymous protests, I don't know if it was OSA, but they would tell my sister, like, hey, your little sister is about to go join Anonymous, this cyber terror organization, which is what Scientology labeled it as.
Mhm.
Sister would have her husband at the time message me and be like, Marisa, can you please not do this? It's putting your sister through a lot of turmoil. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't know her. Like, we don't talk. She doesn't give a shit about me. She basically used me to join staff, and I didn't care, and I continued on with my protest. Um, my mom today, when we had our discussion, she started giving me the timeline. She has a lot of email correspondence. She's like, I found all my emails of what was going on before I ultimately got declared. I asked her if she would share those with me, and of course she said no. No. She's like, no, those are private between me, and this is it's like this is my situation that I have to handle. You have your situation, and I'm like, okay, mom, whatever. But um, I know deep inside my mom knows that she got treated horribly, considering she was a member for 30 years. I know it
Mm.
hurts her and she wants to move, but it is hard for people that have spent the like decades. And I do understand, I guess, from seeing it with my parents. Conversely, my render and all of that back in 2007, I think that's the year my render credits himself as finally leaving, right? 2007.
7. Yes, I
They
believe.
had,
Yep. Mhm.
yeah, so 07 and '08, both Mike Render and Marty Rathburn had their blogs. And my mother was like a devotee of both of them, like reading it daily. Um, and I had no interest because I would kind of scroll through their stuff and I'm like, "Man, this is just Hubbardite stuff for people that still like L. Ron Hubbard and want to keep Scientology working." That's what Marty and Mike were for many, many years. Um, and then the Headleys just, but with that being said, they knew I was a vocal critic and I was a second gen and I was all by myself. I did meet a couple people on Operation Clambake, which I'm sure
Oh,
you've
yeah.
heard.
Yep.
And God,
Andreas something?
yes, and much
Yeah.
respect to him and fly high and rest in peace for him.
Yeah.
I get to know him, but he was very instrumental in this whole movement as a whole. Tori Chrisman was very generous and she helped me out immensely. Um,
She's been doing lives lately, Tori Chrisman. She's, like, back in
I
this
hope
on the scene.
I'm so because she's one of the ones, and lately she's kind of getting overlooked, and I think it's because she doesn't play into the politics of this. She's the one person that everybody likes. You're not going to
Mhm.
find people saying bad things about Mike Render's crew, us, the second gens.
There's that.
We love Tori, and that's a hard feat to accomplish in this movement, especially having everybody like you. But
Yeah.
Tori's the
She
next.
just seems to have, like, this way about her that she's so cool, like, she just, drove up to the protesters the other day, and she was joking around with them, and there she was on camera, and they just thought she was so, so cool, and yeah, she's just very relatable and just a nice person, you
Pretty
know?
kind, I would say, just non-judgmental, and she doesn't care who you are, what your background is, what race, anything. Like she's one of the few people I've met in my life that does not judge people for anything. Um, so, she took me under her wing and helped me. Mark Plummer, he's another one that unfortunately, what's sad is a lot of these people that have been around for a long time that are the very kind and gracious ones, they are all like moving on and passing away, and it's very sad and depressing. Um, so that's where, this new movement of the youth, the second gens, most of us are not children anymore. And I think Mike Render and a lot of these people, they're used to us being kids,
Mhm.
10, 15 years ago, where they can manipulate us and tell us what to do, and we would do it. Those days are over. We're adults, man. We're like middle-aged adults, and we are all like like looking at things like, you know what? Screw you. I'm gonna do what I want when I want. I'm gonna say what I want. Um, I've had that attitude for a very long time because I have found these people in this community, like the renders and you know the Headleys. I really don't know, but what bothers me
Everybody
is like,
says that.
why
I've been
why
interviewing
don't
so many people. I've interviewed so many second gens and ex Scientologists, And I'm yet to know anyone besides, Aaron that really has said they knew him. They knew them. Everybody's like, "I don't know the Headleys. I never talked to the Headleys. I don't know the Headleys." I'm like, "What?" I just find that interesting, if anything else,
I
if
think
nothing
a
else.
can you still hear me
Yep.
okay?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think a part of that, with me at least, is I don't have a story that contains Tom Cruise or any celebrities. I don't have any glitz and glamour stories. I don't have any tabloid material stories. I'm just me. I'm someone that was born and raised in Scientology. I come from a
I'm
middle
sorry, I'm
class
smirking
family.
because that's yeah, you didn't know Shelley Miscavige? You didn't know
Yeah,
Shelley
the
Miscavige, and you didn't know
the
Tom Cruise. Yeah, I get it. That makes
two
sense.
I experienced Scientology from what I would say the majority of middle income to lower class people experience. I remember when I was on staff, former staff members that were borderline homeless that our org would find and recruit. And some of these members would just crash. They would couch surf, sleep on people's couches.
Mhm.
People that were my course supervisors that had zero to little training whatsoever, but they would come into the org and act like they are like superior and above me. But looking back on it now, and the type of people that the org in Phoenix took advantage of, and this is a smaller org, I can't imagine what's going on with like the larger orgs. And I want to get into this later, but what I see that's going on in Los Angeles, all of these assaults taking place, I really think Narcanon, I've seen a few people comment about this. I do think Narcanon has some kind of something going on that's shady. The
Mm.
sober living facilities, they're in Los Angeles, they're in the peak of the major fentanyl crisis,
Yep.
homelessness, drug addiction, mental illness. This is like a gold mine for Narcanon to take these people, get their insurance, whether it's Medi-Cal or private insurance, and just drain their insurance, get them in these sober living places using L. Ron Hubbard's techniques. I mean, it's a very complicated subject matter. I know somewhat about it because I'm in the insurance industry, and I am a former addict and substance abuser myself, and I've seen how it goes. I know how it's a very evil process. Um, so I see in LA these assaults, and I can tell that these people doing this, I know there's this conspiracy, and who knows if it's true or not. So I probably shouldn't call it a conspiracy, but if it's OSA and they're, using these kids on the street to put hits out on the protesters, I don't know. Personally, I believe that Scientology is taking advantage of the mentally ill, homeless, and people that are suffering from addiction on the streets of Los Angeles because it's rampant out there. Think Scientology is taking advantage of those people, and it's very sick and twisted what we have going on, because in a sense, those people that are assaulting people, I'm not defending them,
Mhm.
but in a way, they are being used and taken advantage of by the Church of Scientology. And they're going to just be spit out, chewed up and spit out back on the streets. There's just, I know it sounds like I'm hopping around a lot, but there's a lot going
Yeah.
on.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
there's so much going on. I can't keep up with it,
You're right.
honestly.
No, I think you're painting a picture. You're just kind of like going and like a news person, right? And now we go to Los Angeles and we go kind of, back to like the beginning of the protests and what's going on. I can kind of see how things have evolved. And
Yeah,
yeah,
very.
it's just interesting to just see it is very complicated because it's been,
It's very
a
complicated.
lot.
It's a lot to talk
Yeah.
about, and I'm trying to make it as like easily understandable for people that are just joining into this, people that have been watching this for 5 years, people that have been watching this for 15 years, and people like myself that have been born into this. I guess, yeah, I'm trying to explain it where like everyone can kind of understand and see like the big picture about things. Um, what you're seeing with this, like, and I call it a revolt. It's like a revolution or revolt with Mike Render and all these people that have had a hold on this movement for many years. It is a revolt and it's a revolution. It has nothing to do with Aaron getting kicked off the aftermath and now we're all free. You know what? That's, I would say, 10% of it. There are some people that are like, hey, now I can freely talk
Yeah,
and
yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Um,
Mhm.
can't believe I blah, blah, because I think Mike Render said that. He says
Yeah.
that a
He
lot.
had blah, blah, blah merch and everything. Yeah.
I was watching
I
his
might I
Dale
might
show.
order one, a blah, blah, blah mug. I think that would be great. Tonight I
Can
have
I just say
don't burn
that
my bi I
Tampa?
have a don't burn my biscuits mug because when I don't wanna
Well,
swear too much, I was just like, "That burns my biscuits." So, I think
I
I need a
love
blah,
that.
blah,
Just like
blah.
like, oh, Nora has, oh God, what does she say? Oh, hot dog or
Yeah, uh-oh, hot
something.
dog.
And
Yeah.
I need to think, oh, hot dog and burning my biscuits. I have to think of something that's, I bet I can't. I got to think of something that's,
You've got a lot of them
hidden.
though. Like, I loved the names that you give people. Sorry. They're just so funny.
Yeah, I do admit I have a vivid imagination and you know what? I'm left-handed and I do think it's true. I think left-handed people, we think on the right side of our brain, which
Mhm.
is like a side that really get tapped into. And we kind of think of all the weird abstract shit. So I'm always just, yeah, looking
This is a really
at
good
the
question.
different
I've got
side
some
of,
questions starred that I've been starring, but this popped up and it kind of goes along with what you're saying. Question, Marisa, with all you've been through, what is your personal mantra for living a strong, self-determined life when so many others would have you submit to their lunacy? Good question. What's your personal
honestly, that
mantra?
is a good,
Yeah.
well, I always tell people I was raised in Scientology. I was born and raised in Scientology. That's what was going on in my home life. But while I was being raised in Scientology, I was also raised in a very rough street level. When I went to school, I grew up in one of the roughest neighborhoods in Phoenix, Arizona. I grew up in the 90s, which in Los Angeles and the 80s, it was like gang central. If people remember that time on the West Coast, it was nothing but like gangs everywhere.
Mhm.
I grew up in the thick of that. So I guess what keeps me strong is like, my friends that I hung out with, I'm seeing stuff that's a lot worse than what we're dealing with what's going on with Scientology. I'm dealing with people that are getting shot, people with hardcore drug addictions. And I honestly think just being wise to the world and seeing a lot of people in the real world with heavy duty problems.
Mhm.
I think I did discuss in one of my very first videos. I talk about how my very first funeral I attended when I was 15 and I was in the 8th grade. And it was my best friend because it wasn't her funeral, but her parents were heroin addicts and her father shot her mother and then killed himself. It was one of
Oh.
those. That was the very first funeral I attended at 15 years old. And my best friend had to go to group homes because none of her relatives would take her. And she ended up getting messed up. Girls' group homes,
Mhm.
CPS, they're not the nice, man. Like, I've never been in one, but, I think you have some experience in that. And you're in there with girls with like a lot of problems. And
Yeah.
I would say the bulk of who I know in my real life, people I call my friends, outside of the Scientology world, I would say 80% of them are people that have very, very hardcore problems. And although I'm still friends with the girl I was just telling you about, she had a very happy story. She actually went to school, had a bachelor's degree in social work, and she now owns the place that she used to be a part of as a teenager because nobody wanted her. Um, so I think just growing up around that, the
Mhm.
real a very harsh place.
Mhm.
Scientology is a harsh place. Growing up in Scientology is a harsh world, but you know
Yeah.
what was reality? There's a lot of really bad things going on. People don't know how to pay their rent. Like I said, there's like a huge fentanyl epidemic going on. Um, just tons and tons in the street violence as we see in
Mhm.
LA. Maybe some of that is cultivated by the cult cultivated by the
Cultivated, that's a good point. Yeah.
think some of it really is Los Angeles has always been known as like a violent hub. They've always had problems with the police. If you remember the 90s, the Rodney King era,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I remember that. Mhm.
Los
Yeah.
Angeles, this is what people forget. It is a very tough city.
Mhm.
I'm gotta be ready to scrap if you're going to LA. That's no joke. Um,
Yeah.
so to further on, to continue on with that question, I just think that when you understand a lot of the harshness that's going on in the world and you see that, it tends to make you a little more understandable to really bad problems that people
Right.
are going through, and you tend to be less judgmental, and you want to help those that are in need and those that are going through really, really bad times, whether it's Scientology or non-Scientology.
Right. So we've got some
Hopefully,
more the questions are piling up, and I'll try to do some rapid fire ones too, so we try to get them. Everybody wants to know some things. Paris Cashin wants to know, can I ask anything? I mean, you can ask anything. There's no guarantees that Marisa will answer, but I have a feeling she probably will.
well, yeah, I'm like one of those. I'm very like one of those open-minded people where, girl, you could ask me anything, and even I'm sure there's people, Marilyn, that are messaging you that are like, why are you having that stupid BITCH
Nope,
on? I know.
nobody has.
Oh,
And
okay,
if
because
they did, they they gotta watch out. No, no one has dared.
oh gosh, because I get people commenting. I've seen it all, and you know what? I would say some words of wisdom I do go by, and I think that this is what a lot of people should be using. That no matter what state you live in, my attitude is until I see you standing outside my front door packing
Mhm.
some heat, I
Right,
don't.
it's just words. Right, exactly. So
Then
she
when
wants
I
to
close
know,
my
so she
door,
asks. Oh, go ahead, honey. What'd you say? There's a little bit of
oh,
a delay, so I don't wanna
oh,
talk over you. Go ahead.
that's what was happening to me yesterday with you. I was just gonna say, the whole sticks and stones will break my bones. It's just words, it's
Mm,
just names. You're never going to meet most of these people in a million years. And
yeah,
until you see them opening your door and they're out there, which is never going to happen in a million years, you
mhm,
guys have to worry about. Into fear, and there's nothing to be scared of. And that's a motto I live by. And I guess that's why I come across the way I do. But Paris, she I know her and she comments all the time, and
oh,
she I I do like her. She's a big sweetheart. So yes, go
so
ahead
she
and
has a
ask.
question for you. Question, can you share insights about KDLC, Karen De La Carrier, and Jeffrey Augustine, and expand on what Doug never finished?
Oh goodness.
That's a big yeah.
Um, Paris, I'm gonna get you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sending you a hug. Um,
You don't have to expand as much. Oh, you can expand as much as you
th-
want.
this is
Because
like
I got some questions about Mike Rinder too, but this was the first one, so we'll start with this one.
I and you know what's funny is I'm not a prominent person, and I'm not trying to act like I am. When you guys all know the prominent, Aaron, all those people, I look at it as, people that were born and raised in Scientology. We are somewhat of a family, and we do look out after each other, even though some of us may drive each other nuts at times. Um, the thing with Karen that always upset me, and I never had a problem with her, if you're going back to 2013, 2014, I just looked at her as like a storyteller. One thing that bothered me though is she describes Scientology like it's a Daniel Steele novel. I will never understand that. When she talks about Scientology, she's always like, and David Miscavige with his might and his strength slammed his fist down, and like she describes it, and I'm like, oh my God, would you stop talking about these people like they're superheroes? And L. Ron Hubbard and his gracious presence and blah blah. And I'm like, lady, are you for Scientology, or because it really sounds like
Yeah.
you miss it
There does seem to be
big.
a little bit of romanticism, you know, with the old guard.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
like
I'm
the
expecting
Apollo and the Commodore.
yeah, like
Yeah.
the Love Boat, like season 15, Love Boat. They might as well start doing that
Soon
very
we'll be
soon.
taking
Um,
another run. The Love Boat.
or Dynasty. Remember
Oh,
Dynasty? That's
yeah,
kind of what
the
and
plane.
yeah, Dynasty and just glitz, glamour, blah, blah, blah. And that's not how it is at all. There is no glitz, there is no glamour. Um, my problem with Karen began when we had someone on her show, and this person took a hike and has not been seen from since. I'm almost afraid to say her name. Um, and honestly, I don't, she was a blonde girl, came out with Karen, did a story, and it was a very, very prominent, important story. And then, bam, never. She took a hike. When people take a hike like that, it's for a reason. And I would say 9 times out of 10 is the reason they realized that they were used and exploited for a story, and so they leave. Um, what happened with the problems is, her Outer Banks group.
Yes. I
Someone,
heard something about that actually today. A lot of censoring going on and ridiculous. Yeah.
for those of you,
It's like this cloak and dagger kind of secret society or something.
yeah, I don't know what it is anymore, but I do know back in 2015 when it started, I feel like the newscaster lady. But
Yeah, someone
um,
said I'm too loud, so I just kind of backed up from my mic a little bit.
do I sound
You sound good to me.
okay? But yeah, 2015 is when Outer Banks started, and and someone sucked me into the group. And I've told this story many times where I woke up one morning and I'm on Facebook, and there were all these stories of like how glorious L. Ron Hubbard was and how they missed life on the Apollo and this and that. And I'm like, what the F am I waking up to? Well, I realized it was Outer Banks, and in 2015 it was a secret group and was pro Scientology, pro L. Ron Hubbard. Karen didn't even allow Tony Ortega in that forum. And from time to time, she would send out messages saying, if anybody posts articles from Tony Ortega, you will receive an instant ban, which I thought was strange. That's when my little radar started going up. I'm like, that's kind of weird. Why do you
That's
talk
weird.
to Tony if you don't want him in your group? So there's SPs R Us and then Outer Banks. SPs R Us used to be the go-to place on Facebook, and that was it. So something was going on, and I was very active on SPs R Us, and I made a comment about Outer Banks. I didn't know it was a secret group until afterwards. So I left a comment and I said, hey, I don't think that the Outer Banks forum is like SPZR's. They're not going to like this. Then several people are like, what's Outer Banks? And, of course, everybody is like, wow, why is this a secret group? Next thing I know, I'm kicked out of Outer Banks. And, I have to message Karen. I'm like, hey, Karen, why did you kick me out? Like, did I say something offensive? And it was like talking to the Wizard of Oz. I mean, her message is she's like, well, Marisa, you violated our trust. And when you violate our trust, it's something that takes a long time to gain back. And come back to me in a week and maybe we can talk about it. And I just thought that was so weird. So about a week went by, and this is before Steve Mango
I
did
keep
his
watching this one comment. It says, "That's not culty at all." Yeah, that's not
yeah.
culty at all, right? Yeah, a little
Well,
culty.
back in 2000, because I don't think Steve made his video about Karen till I don't know 2020 or something, but I knew she was auditing him back in 2017 when it occurred. And because my mom was still, she was friends with a lot of indies and free zoners, they actually have a newsletter and a magazine. So I used to read these, and Karen was always advertised in those. You go to the back if you want an auditor, but you find a class 5 auditor all the way up to she's like the only class 12. I'm like, why is she advertising for auditing in every magazine? That's weird. So one day on SPSRS, I just came right out and said, can somebody please tell me why Karen De La Carrier is auditing when those of us who grew up in Scientology were speaking out against this? I just think it's weird. Like how can you be against Scientology if you're auditing? So what people need to understand is auditing makes up like 85 to 90% of Scientology. Auditing is the whole point of Scientology. When I asked that question, she had me removed quicker than lightning. Now, and that's when I began to have real problems with her antics.
Oh.
Why is she erasing people, censoring people, and why does she not want that question asked? Um, then
Can I
Steve
can I just
Mango,
can I just break in? I don't know if you know this, but there's something called I'm not sure what group. There's at least one, maybe two groups that I joined when I first started really like looking into cult recovery. And this was, a few years ago before I started into the SBTV thing. And I looked on Facebook and there's several of these cult, it's just cult. It's not Scientologists, just cult. And I just realized that she runs at least one or two of those ones too, because she was constantly once I started, in the Leah Remini group and all that, I noticed that the same person, this Karen De La Carrier, was just putting out mass posts on all these groups. And I was like, oh, who is this person? Then I realized when I rewatched the aftermath again who she was, because her picture doesn't look anything like her. It looks like she's like 20 in that picture or something, right? The one that she uses for her profile picture, it doesn't look anything like her. So I was like, oh, who's this person? Well, because I was looking for a group that was just general cult survivors, and I was actually, recently thinking because I have my coffee cults and crafts, but it's there's a lot of crocheters and like even some of my friends that in real life that I know. So I'm thinking, it would be nice to have like a general cult group that she's not running, and I don't know of any. So if anybody does, that'd be interesting. So yeah, I just wanted to put that in there that that's not the only two groups that she has control of
oh, she
on Facebook.
probably has many, and she's one of those people, and that's another thing I find weird is control freaks that usually have a lot of neuroticism towards them. They're very neurotic people, and they're always like, I have to do that. And you just get this like nervous energy. I don't do well with nervous energy. I really don't. It's not, I don't know. I don't do well with it. Um,
I've heard this too that apostate Alex is a mod on I believe it's Outer Banks. Just putting that out there because someone wrote it. That's what I've
See,
heard
I
too.
don't know him, and I know you do, and I've heard a lot of things about him. So honestly, I have nothing to say. That I've never dealt with him, but I've heard things about him. And I've told you about how there was like a UK movement, a giant one. You had Sam Domingo, who was the ex-wife of Placido Domingo, the opera
Mhm.
singer. She was huge, and she had the celebrity connections. She's no longer in the picture. I bet you $500 if she was around, a lot of this stuff would not be going on because people were afraid of her. She was very outspoken and she didn't take any bull crap from anyone. She was not a fan of Karen's, um, but she's having some problems of her own. And in this community, they stereotype people like, oh, you're suffering from mental problems and you got this going on and that. And it's like, so what? So what if somebody has mental problems? But the thing in Scientology is they do not believe in mental illness. So I think that's why you get people like Mike Render and even Chris Shelton. The mainstream society doesn't look at depression and things like that with a very cold, callous attitude. Mainstream society is generally very empathetic, compassionate, and
Yeah.
you'll see the Scientology come out. Even Mike Render, his blog, I read it, and what's happening is he's used to the
Yep.
anti-Scientology movement before Aftermath, and even the beginning of Aftermath, where he was basking in the ambience of glory of fame. Um, the anti-Scientology movement used to be fairly small. It's not like how it is now with like tens of thousands of people watching and tuning in. So Mike Render will say something and he'll get a lot of heat and then he'll realize like his fleas and tick deal,
Yeah.
that's not something you say. In his position, you can't say that and like get away with it. So a lot of people are like, wow, Mike Render, screw you. And he
Yeah.
realizes now that he's a public figure, he can't talk like that. So he's backpedaling and he's like, oh, I did not mean
Yeah.
that. And
Took him 2.5 months to apologize
he
after
does
all the
mean,
pressure he's gotten. Yeah.
oh,
He
he
said it
means, he
yeah, he
means it.
said it in mid-November. But there's another question kinda leading up to what you're saying. Hillary Murphy wants to know, why do you think that people are done covering for Mike Rinder? Why now after all these years? I think that's a good question. And I
It
think
is
you
a
were
good
starting to
question.
you were starting to address that. Why, he's
It's a
realizing now?
question, and you know, I guess that's part of why I'm here is because I've seen what's been going on in this movement since 2006. Um, and it's hard to explain. People blame it on Aaron. They think it's because Aaron was kicked out, and now all of a sudden everyone is free at last and able to talk about Mike Render. And I kind of explained yesterday there before Mike Render was in Aftermath, and when it was announced he was going to be in Aftermath, there was not a big celebration amongst the ex-Scientology community. There was a lot of skepticism, disappointment, people that were like, why is Leah picking the former head of OSA? Um, and the reason I think it's happening now, a lot of the fans are doing it now because Aaron, uh,
Mhm.
got kicked out. But Serge, I would say Serge Delmar is a big player in this
Yep,
movement,
I
and he's
agree.
an up
Mhm.
and comer. Serge does not give a shit, and Serge will say whatever he wants
He
when
literally doesn't give a shred of an F. I
he
love it.
doesn't care. He doesn't care, and
Mhm.
became an auditor at 10 years old. From my understanding, he's audited Mike and Marty. All of the stuff he has on them are, he was a child. They can't really say anything. And, then there's this like sentiment, which I think is funny, and you guys are going to be hearing this go around. The latest thing I've been hearing is Mike Rinder was not the head of OSA after all. It was
Mhm.
David Miscavige.
Yeah, that's
And
been in my inbox.
I
Mhm,
think it's funny and that you guys are going to be hearing this
mhm.
very soon. Mike Rinder was not the head of OSA. It was David Miscavige. So it's like, sure, Mike Rinder, let's blame it on the guy that nobody has access to.
Right.
He's going to be able to interview David Miscavige, you know, so blame it on the dude that no one can talk to. It's a brilliant move, Mike Rinder. Um, so that's going on, and it's like, okay, Mike Rinder, if you don't know what happened in OSA, if you had no part of it, if you weren't there, if you didn't do this and you didn't do that, then who the F are you? You you might as well say you're not the head of OSA. And have we had it wrong this whole time? Have you been lying
He
and
said he was
saying
ahead of OSA.
he's been saying it for yeah, like almost 2 decades or longer. I remember going to events when I was a child, and I think I told you how it works in Phoenix. It'll be done on like a satellite dish. I got to see David Miscavige and his events, and sometimes they'd bring Mike Render out. I've seen Heber Jenge many, many times talking at Scientology events on satellite TV at the org. Um, and it says Mike Render, OSA, you know, head of OSA, whatever the operations or the technical term is. Again, it's been 22 years since I have stepped foot in an org or had anything to do with Scientology. Um, but I find it funny how he is just weaseling his way out of like anything. It's amazing the stuff that that man is coming up with. And I never really gave two shits about Mike Render because I never dealt with him. Um, I had the situation with my nephew that passed away, and OSA flew to my house from LA, and I had to talk to OSA directly in person. The only reason I had to do that is because my sister had a high profile position as the executive director, and the Phoenix Gazette, the local news stations were making a story of his death, and they wanted to know where the mother was at and why she was not home. Back in 2001, that was a big deal. Now, if somebody was to say, hey, the sister was a Scientologist and she was ordered to slave away 18 hours a day in Scientology, that would have been a very bad look for Scientology. So they flew OSA out to my house to do damage control and order us not to tell the news media anything. Now that time has gone by, I am kind of curious. I'm like, who, somebody knows who gave those orders. And I would like to know who gave those orders for OSA to fly from LA to Phoenix to order me not to say anything. And I spoke to these people live in the flesh in person. There were three of them.
Mhm.
And I've been talking about this for years and my story has changed once. Um, so yeah, Mike Render, if you were not the head of OSA and then you were just lying to us for clout, which I think is funny, just seeing these people say that word clout. Um,
Yeah,
w-
I hear it a
what
lot.
were you? Were you the head of OSA or were you not? Or are you now going to lie and blame everything on David Miscavige? It's all David Miscavige's fault. And you guys, I predict that's what's going to come down the pipeline. David or Mike Render is going to start blaming everything on Miscavige. It's all Miscavige's fault. Render had nothing to do with it. Just
Mhm.
be prepared. Be prepared for what's coming down pretty soon.
Yeah, I just wanna put up this from Paris Cashin. Rinder was directly responsible for hiding Danny Masterson's crimes, then 20 years later, taking credit for a prosecution of Danny Masterson, so many extra victims. And yeah, I have a question about that. Like, what do you think he did know? I would assume, I mean, I don't know because I'm not an ex-Scientologist, but some of these fairly high profile, you know, crimes and happenings, right? Like the Danny Masterson case, like Liz Gale's brother, is it Philip Gale, like your nephew, what happened at with in Phoenix, like Miriam's case, things like that. Would that have gone up to the chain of command? I mean, and the PR person too, I'm not sure if Mike Rinder was also head of PR when, your nephew passed away, but I would find it hard to believe that, he didn't know about any of it. I don't know. What do you think
And
about that?
I find it hard to believe too, because why would have OSA flown to my house? And uh, as I explained yesterday, there is no OSA in Arizona. I think there is a DSA, but OSA, because we're a smaller org, we are what is it, class two org. Um, OSA from LA and all the big wigs, they kind of oversee Phoenix. Um, and I don't know the inner workings. And that's why I offered yesterday. I said, look, I am willing to use my nephew's scenario as an example, as an educational experience of what really happens. Who are the key players? How does the chain of command work? Who would have ordered OSA to come to my house? Who would have ordered OSA to speak to me and tell me not to talk to the news media? Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
OSA stayed at my nephew's funeral. Who would have done that? You know,
Yeah.
it was obviously a chain of command, and people did that. And I do remember Chris Shelton when he first came out, and he says he was my sister's upper management person that he had to check into even though my sister was the executive director. He said my sister every Thursday after 2 had to report to Chris Shelton what the stats of the Phoenix org were. That's how he described himself to me in 2013 before he went to Karen De La Carrier's house to do his big movie. You know what? Or not movie. I always call videos, these little YouTube videos, movies.
I
His
was like, "You did a
funny,
movie at her house? Okay."
the YouTube
Okay, so he
video.
did a big video. Okay, I get it. Yep.
And I did. I met him. I've told this story in one of my videos, but I met him when he had a layover at the Phoenix org. And I remember on Facebook, we were like pretty decent friends with each other. And he was like, "Who's your sister? You said your sister was the ED of the Phoenix org." And I told him, and he's like, "Oh my God, I know her. She was a good friend of mine." Me and Chris became friends over the phone. And he told me when he was going to fly to Karen De La Carrier's house, he's like, "Yeah, I'm about to give my very first video, get everything off my chest." He's like, "I understand, Marisa. I know that you're kind of involved in the movement. You go to anonymous protests, you do this and that." He's like, "I have no desire to get involved in any of that at all. I don't want a YouTube channel. Don't want to talk about myself. I just want to go to Karen's. I want to, more like a kind of like a cathartic experience for him,
Mhm.
get everything off his chest, or a therapeutic experience." That's all he wanted to do, is what he told me. And did that. And here we are. I don't know how many years later, 13 years later. And now he's the critical thinker and thinks he can give everybody advice. And he's like the savant of how people should live. So I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
heard, someone in the chat said the other day that Chris Shelton said that he doesn't know who Marilyn Honig is even, and I'm like, "So? Like, why is he even saying my name then?" Like, I don't e
They
I
know, they know who we are. And who was it that said, I think it was Mark Headley, when he was talking about Serge Delmar. And I read this when he first put his 3-page fifth
yeah,
lecture up. And he was like, Serge who? He's like, "I know a lot of Serges. I have no idea who you're talking about." It's like, dude, you know who we're talking
yeah,
about. Only Serge
exactly.
making a big stink with a YouTube channel. Like, don't even play that. These people know, but by them acting like, "Who are you? I don't know you." It gives them a sense of importance, and a sense of importance, so that we feel like we're not worthy enough and big enough because Biff Headley doesn't know who Serge is. Chris
Mm,
Shelton doesn't know who so and so is. Therefore, we're nobodies, and it's quite laughable, very laughable.
Can everyone hear Marisa? Someone's saying that they can't hear you, but uh,
Can you hear me?
I can. I can hear you. How's the sound, guys? I know I'm kind of loud. I'm moving my mic away. I did turn it down a little bit. Okay. They're saying they can hear you. All right. Yeah. You're good. I can hear you. Oh, not real
Yeah.
good. Okay. Do you want to move your mic a little closer? Oh, people are saying
Um,
they can. Most people can hear
I
you.
had to because oh goodness, it was like hurting my it's pinky because I when I had it on the phone, it was like not really doing a good job. Remember how we had like the sound and it wasn't working too well? Where did I
Yeah.
put my mic? Oh, there it is. Okay, let me know. Hang on a second. In the meantime, if anyone has, does anyone have any more
Yeah.
questions
Yeah.
besides?
I got some questions for you. Yeah. Let's see. I'm seeing comments. I'm not seeing a lot of questions. All right, I'll go from the bottom here. Power Lies to Paralyze. Thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you, ladies, for your much needed deep dive into the culture of lies, misdirection, and self authoritarian, grandiose supremacy of Scientology culture. I like that. Lots of big words that I'm, I'm learning. This live should be seen by all. Doug Kramer would be proud. Xenu Marlene. Yeah, we could do a Xenu Marlene.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what that whoever
somebody
said
else
that.
mentioned Doug. Yeah, someone else mentioned Doug too. And yeah, he definitely would have a lot to say, you think?
Oh gosh, he would love like this time of what we're going through with all of the kind of like the revolution of people turning on, not really turning. I think it's just a revolution of we're not babies anymore,
Yeah, asking questions. Yeah.
a lot of these people like Mike Render have been using our stories um to gain sympathy. I don't know if this is on, but does this
I can
sound the
hear you.
same?
I can hear you. I don't know it
Okay.
sounded the
Let me
same when you put it up to me.
If you guys cannot hear me, please let me know. Oh, there it goes.
What do you think,
Listen.
guys? Kelly's still awake. Doug. Yes, we love Doug. Yeah.
Yes, and Doug loved Kelly Copter. I love Kelly Copter. Is just an awesome girl. And I know Kelly, you're not
Amazing.
gonna take any shit. And you're probably gonna have people messaging you like, you know, you need to do this and don't do this and don't listen to so and so. And I can tell you're smart enough to know who's just, trying to, they're afraid. I think these people, it's what's really sad is this is not about helping people. It's about control. It really is.
Yeah. They're saying you sound better. I'm gonna put up those Xenu Marlene. We'll do a little toast to Doug. What do you think? This is the overlay that Kelly made for us, for me and Doug. So cheers to Doug.
Cheers. Where is I don't know if I brought a Xenu, Marlene. Hey, let me know though if anytime you guys can't hear me, but everything's cool so far.
Someone said it was better. Someone said I drive-in fan said I can hear you, but I'm using earphones. Sound is better, Susan P said.
Okay,
Sound is
I'll just
better. Okay. Duchess Diana can hear you. The Duchess said she can hear you loud and clear. So there you go.
awesome. All right. Oh,
Yep.
I'm trying
So
to
what
fix
else
this.
we have for questions? Someone wants to know, Calico 26, is Celebrity Center handled by OSA or someone else?
Well, I only went to Celebrity Center once, and it's a really funny story because you know how when you're young and your parents will take you to like Disneyland or SeaWorld? When I was
Oh, I never
young,
went, but yeah, I hear you.
right, you have,
I was a
well,
foster kid. Yeah.
when I went to we were going to have my childhood fairy tale trip that my father decided to take me on because he made a lot of money was Celebrity Center. Every child's dreamhood fantasy.
What the
And so I got to go to Celebrity Center and
what
I
the
spent a
literal
lot.
AF? I don't know what to say.
My dad, he made a lot of money that year. And my father was like, as a treat, he's like, you guys, I'm going to take you somewhere that we might not be able to ever go to again. And yeah, it was Celebrity Center or Celebrity. You know what? There's a place here in Phoenix called Celebrity Theater, and it's where they have concerts. So if I say Celebrity Theater, I'm sorry, but yeah, Celebrity Center.
Mhm.
We stayed there. One thing I do I'll never forget, I remember it smelled like almost like a nursing home or something. Like and there was wallpaper, and you can tell that it has not been renovated in probably 50 years. So like they probably like didn't remodel that place since Charlie Chaplin was alive, is my guess. Like Charlie Chaplin was probably performing the piano at Celebrity Center.
Charlie
The silent actor Charlie
silent,
Chaplin.
yes, yes. Yep, I'm
That's
old
probably
enough
the
to
last time they did anything, but my parents really enjoyed it because of course they're older and they're like, wow, this is like the pristine place that Scientologists stay at. And I didn't really get it. I found it to be kind of hokey, like tons of really gaudy paper, what's it called? Wallpaper everywhere.
mhm,
Wallpaper from the 1970s. But I would say Celebrity Center is where they have a huge target for young people, like aspiring actors, musicians, whatever. Um, and a lot of people give me flack for this, but Steve Mango actually has a very interesting Celebrity Center story. And this is why I became friends with Steve. He's not like people that grew up in Scientology. I found him interesting because he's the person I grew up with, having to see his little smiling face on all of the promotional materials that they would give to us. And they used him. He was like the model for all of the Scientology promo pieces. And his story is more of like he's the prime bait of who they look for. It's
mhm,
a center, and he's someone that they caught. I find his information to be very valuable. Um, but again, we all like somebody that someone does not like. Like there's people that don't like
mhm.
me, but I have friends like
I like you.
friends a lot. Yeah, but you're gonna meet someone that's like, oh my God, I can't stand Marisa.
You got
So
100 people in here that like you and many on the replay.
well,
Yeah.
thank you guys. So that's why, and like I said yesterday, I am one of those friends where I really, once you're my friend, it's like you're just you're in like Flynn. And if I see someone doing something bad to you, I will fight for your rights. Someone else I'm very good friends with is Victoria Britton. And these are people whose stories have been manipulated. And God only knows if my story's been, as they say, black PR'd behind the scenes. Um,
Mm,
these are people that have good stories. And now that the tides are turning, we should be interviewing people like this again. Because there's a lot of people, for one person like me, I'm like, how many other people are out there like me? How many other people got taken advantage of in Celebrity Center? Young people, young aspiring actors. There's lots of them. And I've talked about my nephew and niece that survived the house fire. They want absolutely nothing to do with speaking out against Scientology, and I think their way of dealing with trauma is focusing on So my nephew got married. He has 4 kids now. My sister got heavily, or I mean, my little niece got heavily involved in bodybuilding, and I think that's where she focused her mind, was like her body. They don't want anything to do with speaking out against Scientology, even though their story is like 5 times worse than mine. And it makes me wonder how many more people out there are like that. There's got to be tons, you know, tons of people that don't want to share their story and they don't want to go public. So I feel like it's my duty to, I guess, go public for people that have similar stories to mine that maybe can relate to what I've been through, you know? But we've all seen what's been happening for the last 20 years in this anti-Scientology movement. Um, and in the last 3 weeks, I don't know how many orgs have been shut down, like their doors. That's never happened in the history of me speaking out against Scientology. And if it's never ends leading this change and leading this revolution, and if it's now time to fight and the ugly part, like getting in the belly of the beast and actually having to protest and do the work to get rid of Scientology, for some reason it's upsetting the older crowd of people that have been doing this for a long time. And it's like I think they're upset by it. They feel like they're not being given the credit that they deserve. And it's like, well, you guys should be helping us. Mike Render, all of you, why aren't you helping us? You know? But they don't, because they sit back and they think they're like, oh, those dumb kids. What I do think about Mike Render's letter to Miriam and Rabbit, I could totally tell that Mike Render is just like, oh, these stupid kids don't know anything. And he probably, he got his attorney, Ford Green, and I've mentioned this before. Mike Render has access to at least a dozen high-powered attorneys in Hollywood. Why
Look
would
who's
he?
here. Look who's here.
Oh,
Mango
Mango.
tea.
You
Spilling
have
the tea. Hey, Mango. Were your ears ringing?
there are a lot of us, and I think this should be a time for healing, and this should be a time where those of us that maybe had bad impressions of people because of like Mike Render and the Karens and the Jeff telling us bad things, maybe they're not
Mhm.
bad people after all, and we should give them a chance and
Yeah.
look at this is a new chapter in the history of Scientology activism. Because, like I said, I've been around a long time. Mike Renders never helped me. Karen's never helped me. The Headleys have never helped me. All of these big shots have never helped me once. And I
Mhm.
would tell my story all of the time. And like I said, I think it's because I don't have any famous people to talk about. But my story represents a lot of people in America, like average run of the middle class people that Scientology targets. That's my
Mhm.
story. That's that's the demographic that I represent, and I was ignored essentially
Right.
because of
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why it is, but it does seem like, I said this I've said this many times lately, recently, is that when this whole, YouTube thing kind of exploded, there was like an unspoken kind of thing was like, this is how it's going to go. The narrative was being controlled. Don't talk to this one. Don't talk to that one. And it was sort of like one of those things where I'm just kind of navigating it. And I started to realize that people were trying to handle me and telling me who to talk to and who not to. And that's how I got out of a cult. I have that little rebellious thing. And so I was like, people telling me, oh, Doug's a bad boy. Don't talk to him. And I was like, I started listening to him and I was like, he's got a lot of good things to say. And then I ended up, getting kind of involved in the whole ZDT thing, which really was a disaster. But out of it, I got some really good friendships like Doug. So if that's all ZDT gave me, then that's great. I can laugh all the crap off. But Mango T is saying Marisa is my bitch. I support her 100%. Yes. He's
You
he
are
sounds like a
right.
good friend. I
They
hope you're
call him.
doing well, Steve. I've been thinking of you, and it's so hard to lose a dear friend. I mean, we all miss Doug so much. Yeah.
What people need to understand, and this is what I try to say, is like, ever since I've been around this community, I remember Steve Mango was in that My Scientology movie, and he was like the flavor of the month in this movement for a while. He had a pretty decent part in that movie. And that's when Karen, everybody was like up his, you know what, like, oh, Steve Mango and blah, blah, blah. That's during the time when Karen audited him. And, you know, just think about it today. If, he was 23 years old, and I always ask people this, when you were 23 years old, did you have your head on straight? I know I didn't. The only people I know that really had their head on straight at 23 years old were people that like joined the military at 18. Those are kind of
Mm,
like the only people I know. At 23, I was working in the nightclub scene. Life was a big party for me. You know, most 23-year-olds they just don't know your life is not established yet. And we're really big on psychiatry, those of us that are in the anti-Scientology movement, we're all about mental health, therapy, psychology, psychiatry. I mean, shoot, I am on Wellbutrin right now, and no shame in my game.
me too.
Yeah,
Fairly
it's,
new. We're Wellbutrin sisters. Yeah, I hadn't taken anything for years, and recently, my doctor was like, "You want to try this?" Yeah, I'll try it. I've been crying a lot on my streams, so that maybe would help a little bit. I don't know.
it's good though. I mean, crying and like letting your emotions out is a good sign.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I just think, I'll never forget when I saw that message. Karen referred to Steve as her pet project and was like, I'm going to make you my pet project.
Ew.
It was almost like experimental auditing. And it's like, okay, whether you like Steve or not, like take Steve out of the picture. Let's pretend it's someone else altogether. Would you be okay with somebody telling a 72-year-old Class 12 auditor, would you be okay with that person telling a 23-year-old young man who's suicidal, hey, don't seek mental health treatment. Don't seek a psychiatrist. See me because I will get rid of your problems. I'm the best in the world. I have the stats to prove it. And like I said, she didn't even give the dude a discount. That's what gets me. She didn't even give
And I
him
heard
like a
it's not cheap.
like at least give the two 10% off. I would have maybe sort of thought of it differently, but no discount, nothing. And a lot of times it takes many years to go by before you realize the severity of what was done to you. And it still happens to me today with Scientology. I will look back at things and I will get really mad about it. And I think that's what happened to him as years went by and it's kind of like, I was really taken advantage of and this and that. And I know people were upset about some camera thing with him, but it's like, hey man, nowadays everybody's doing GoFundMe's for everything. And I know not everyone's going to look at my viewpoint and agree with it, but that's the way I look at it. And I have a zero tolerance policy for auditing, especially someone that's suicidal and has mental problems. I think the worst thing you could do to a young person is scramble their brain even further with things
Mhm.
like that. That's why I had his side and was so against that. It's just morally wrong. And as an anti-Scientologist, I would be a hypocrite if I didn't stick to being against that. The whole purpose of being against
Yep.
Scientology is to prevent kids and young people, oh sorry, from getting involved in it,
Yeah, and you said there was something about a GoFundMe. I mean, yeah, everyone's doing it. So is it okay when some people do it and some people don't? That doesn't make or other people do that Karen or whoever doesn't like? I don't understand what happened with that.
Well, it used to be back then, and we're going back like 7 to 10 years ago, 2017 to, I would say the
Mhm.
2015 to 2017 era. Yeah, if you did a GoFundMe and you were an anti-Scientologist and you said like, hey, help me raise a microphone or help me raise this. Yeah, a lot of people would be like, oh, you're using Scientology to get what you want. You're using Scientology to make money. And yeah, a lot of people people would get vilified for those type of fundraisers. But if you look at it now, oh my God, there's fundraisers everywhere.
Yeah,
I'm one of the
and a lot of the
I
second gens don't have, parents to help them out or, they've had a raw deal. So some of the older ones have been able for some reason they were able to go from like the gold base to Sea Org and then kind of work for themselves and have money and private jets or whatever. The younger second gens haven't had that. So I don't mind being like their mom because they don't have a mom. That sucks, you
and
know?
I care when people have GoFundMe's because you have a choice. You have a choice to donate and you have a choice not to donate.
Right.
No
Right.
one's put
And I
you
understand if people were grifting, like there have been a lot of problems with GoFundMe's. But in this case, I don't see a problem with it at all. No. A lot of people are
yeah,
doing it.
that's the world. That's the where we're headed with the future of everything.
Mhm.
Fundraisers. I mean, I see people making fundraisers just to get money, like pretty much to strike it rich and kind of and
Yeah.
it's just the world we're living in. And it's not just GoFundMe. There's so many different charities that won't even censor you or delete your charity. Those are the times that we're living in. We're living in cyber, futuristic, digital slash technological times. Businesses are being ran. The whole AI art
Yeah.
stuff that's
Mhm.
living in, and people from the older era of anti-Scientology activism, you need to get up to speed and just realize that's where we're at.
Mhm.
I might not agree with all of it, but that's where the world is headed.
Definitely. So
We
I
just
have a
have
couple of comments I wanted to read, and then people are just literally throwing out names and they want your take on these people. It's like everybody wants to know what Marisa thinks about these, these players. And I think it's valid. So I'm just going to read a couple of comments from some of people just wanted to giving you love and just kind of expressing, some things. And then I would just want to throw out, we're going to do it like a rapid fire. I'm just going to give you a name. And then, if you have anything to say, you can. If you don't, no comment is fine. So we've
okay.
got, yeah, we
Rapid
got Anna. Yeah,
fire
everybody
sounds
wants to know.
fun.
So Anna says, I find Marisa very credible. Also, the biggest troll ZDT fears her. Yes, I love that. Um, she is exceptionally good with trolls, jumping in late and will start at the beginning. Just wanted to comment when you are still live. So we could talk the entire time on ZDT. If anyone wants to know Marisa's your opinion on ZDT, you have somebody said Tony Two Toes. Yep. You have video upon video in the beginning, and I used to watch those, and I was like, thank God for Marisa because he was going in hard on me. And so I was just so thrilled that you spoke out. I was just, really had mad respect for you
Hard on
back
me
then.
too. The very first ones in the beginning, and people forget about that. I was one of the first ones because I
Mhm.
talked to them and I stayed on the phone with them for quite some time. And through video, it was Instagram. So video, talked to him a few times, and then he literally like went ballistic and flipped out on me. Um, I kind of knew right then and there. I'm like, dude, I think this guy has a traumatic brain injury. And I mean, I
Mhm.
know he's sane right now on his thing. The reason I say that is I have two friends that have had traumatic brain injuries. One was in a Jeep rollover accident in high school. The other one is a good friend of mine. Um, her name's Jackie. I've known her since the eighth grade, and she's the same age as me. She was the victim of a home invasion, and the robber shot a gun and it grazed her head. She's still alive, but it caused a traumatic brain injury. Um, and what people don't understand about those is that it literally changes your personality. I mean, what was that dude that got sent to prison, Aaron Hernandez? I think he was like a traumatic brain injury.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right.
I
Yeah.
got into many things with Zero Dark Tony before I started thinking this about him. He was telling his audience to call CPS on me, get my child taken, some really dirty things where I'm like,
Mhm.
you really want to go there with me? Like, I'm not bringing kids into this. He's the one that like did the whole kid thing first. Like, dude, if you want to bring kids into this, I mean, we can go there. I don't really want to, but I will do it. So I did it, and that's pretty much why he left me alone. But I started understanding just his symptoms and the things that he's doing. I think sometimes as ex-Scientologists, it's best to just be the bigger man and just walk away and be like, I'm not messing with this person. Because in a way, it's sort of like arguing with someone with a
Yep.
disability. And I don't want to be a person. I don't want to be arguing with people that have, for example, like fetal alcohol syndrome or whatever. Like, it's like, hey, man, it's just time to walk away. And he got some good insults at me. I said some things to him, and I could tell when it comes to kids, he doesn't want to go there. And I'm like, dude, now you went after my kid, I went after yours. It's a fair and square deal, and that's why he left me alone.
Mhm.
Um, but the last time, and I tried checking on my friend that got grazed with a bullet. Last time I checked, her Facebook was like a week ago, and she's out saying that she's going on tour with Taylor Swift. Um,
Aw.
she went to a tour with Taylor Swift, which is of course not true, but she unfriended me because she was getting taken advantage of, the whole scammer. There were all these men like promising, like, hey, you're so pretty. And she was sending them money, and they were promising they wanted to get married to her. And
Aw.
I'm like, Jackie, please stop. These people are taking advantage of you. And oh man, she was telling me to go F myself. I'm just jealous of her. And I'm like, I'm trying to be your friend. Like, you are getting taken advantage of. And yeah, we stopped talking because she thought that I was trying to take her scammer boyfriends away from her. And it's
Mm.
sad. I've known this girl since I was 16, and it's because of this brain injury. She'll never be the same person. Personally, that's what I think is going on, Tony. And then he started saying this. I wonder if he's saying it because he's heard me talk about it, and
Mm.
he's like, oh, well, you know what? That's a good excuse. But
Probably, yeah. I could see.
I don't agree with anything that he's said to people. I think it's horrible, but people with traumatic brain injuries, they some of them can turn into very malicious, mean people,
Mhm.
and it's really not them talking. So that's I guess my attitude about him. It's crazy. This is a crazy world, this whole movement. He's not the
Mhm.
first, not the last kind of interesting character. This is just a movement where you're gonna pretty much see everything. You're gonna see the crazy of craziness involved in this, and you get used to it, and you just have to realize you have to learn how to deal with people and when to ignore people and when to just move on. Really,
Yep, I
but
hear ya. So we got another we got another name. We got a couple of names that people just throwing it out. They just want your thoughts, Marty girl. Question, Marisa, what do you think of Janice and Mark from Peeling the Onion?
oh my goodness.
I know these are just opening a can of worms with each one. And
Are
people
you
just
sure
wanna
you
know.
really want to know though? You know what? I'm a straight up person and I really don't care because I have a lot of friends in I would say I have more friends people that I consider my friends that are very good people in this movement. For every one person that I dislike or that dislikes me, there's probably 10 that I like
Mhm.
and where, they like me. Mark Fisher, obviously, I was unaware of his Thailand excursions. That's not an OSA hit. And the thing about OSA is it's being used in this community as a scapegoat and an excuse.
Yeah,
People can go out and
I
do
agree.
bad. If they get caught, they're like, oh, OSA's doing this. No, dude. I don't think it's an OSA thing. Mark Fisher was a Facebook friend of mine for years. Um, he unfriended me when I publicly asked why Karen De La Carriere still audits people. He was my Facebook friend for probably 3 or 4 years. I did notice on his page it was nothing but strippers, strip clubs, brothels. He lives in Las Vegas, scantily clad saloon girls. That part didn't bother me because it's like, hey, they're adult women. He's an adult. Have at it, whatever. But the Thailand sexcapade thing, as a mother of two daughters, yeah, I think that's not okay. That's not acceptable. I don't understand why people are not calling him out for that. Um, I've seen several people do interviews with him, and all he does is praise the e-meter. It's like, well, you might not have gotten anything about it, but it helped me a ton. And auditing was the best thing I've ever done, and it's helped me so much. And it's like, this is supposed to be a quote unquote anti-Scientology movement. Why are you over here saying how much auditing helped you? You know? Um, Janice, I don't particularly know. I do know, I forget if she was a born in or a second gen. Do you know? I know she's a second gen born
Yeah,
in or
she's a 2nd gen. I don't know if her parents got in when she was really young. Is she from Australia? Believe she's from Australia. If not born in, I think really young, very young. And then she was in the Apollo, like what? She was young, like early teens. But yeah, didn't she
yeah, she
say that was she in the whole thing with, like, basically Scientology became kind of illegal, and then she had to move to the UK. She was hanging out with LRH's kids. There's tons of pictures of her with, like, the redheaded Diana and all the LRH's, his 2 boys, and I've seen pictures where they were, like, sorta like royalty, and yeah, she was a, um, Commodore's messenger. Yes, she was.
That's right.
Basically a
Yeah,
born-in. Yeah, basically a born-in.
that's her
I mean, she seems
booking.
like a nice lady. I've interviewed her once. She seems very nice, but yeah, it does seem like a whole glory days thing. Honestly, I got a little bored with it. Like, it was nice to see the pictures in the beginning, but it's like just seeing all the stories over and over and over and over. It just, I don't know. It's not really my thing,
Yeah,
honestly.
you know, we all have, we're all a part of this, those of us that are second gens, and we have certain places that we go to where we can just talk and understand each other.
Mhm.
And, you know, trying to just see how I can say this, but some of these people that are friends of mine are very strict. They are more strict than others. Some people don't care if independent Scientologists are in or sympathizers. And then there are other people like myself that have a zero tolerance policy for LRH sympathizers and things like that. I am one of those people. One of my friends that had a group, which, I don't even know if she has the group anymore. This is going back, way back. But um, I didn't know, Janice was how should I put this nicely? Not nicely, but I do think, obviously she has Mark Fisher as her partner, and he's very sympathetic and he's very pro Scientology, and he likes it a lot. I would not be able to have a YouTube channel and team up with someone like that. So it leads me to believe she must kind of have those same feelings too. And this goes back into story time. I think that her book is good for, there are people that are interested in the historical aspect of this, and they want to know like what happened throughout history. And her book is good on that level. Personally, I don't want to read about how great it was growing up on the ship and handing L. Ron Hubbard his mail and, you know, doing being his little messenger. I don't want to hear about that because I think L. Ron Hubbard was an evil bastard. If you were his mail delivery person and got to send him messages, good for you. But the evil that he has done versus the fact that you were sending him messages doesn't really match up in my book. So
Mhm.
one time Janice, yeah, I got a really nasty message from her once, and she was like kind of cussing me out, and I will just leave it at that. Um, so you know, I don't I just again have a zero tolerance policy of L. Ron Hubbard and the sympathizers. I don't feel sorry for them. You're dealing with people like you hear Serge, who
Yeah. It
was
does seem like the practices are damaging. It's fine if they wanna practice it, but number 1, I think they really should be honest, and number 2, I think that, children should not be audited. It's terrible. I mean, any, early childhood education professional like Liz Gale, I mean, I've learned a lot from her, and it's awful, awful what they do to kids. It's not right.
yeah, it's really bad. And I mean, I experienced a ton of auditing growing up from the time I was like 5 years old. And I more or less was used as a guinea pig. It wasn't auditing to really help me, which I don't know if it would have, but I was used quite a bit just to help auditors. And they would ask me all of their questions, method one, grade zero, all the way to that I've had, but questions so that they can like fix their e-meter. And pretty much every sec check you can imagine, I've had tons of them.
Mm.
Um, so and it's not good. I mean, your brain is still developing, your mind is
Yeah.
still developing. You shouldn't be asked questions of like if you're a communist. Have you blown up any planets? Do you know people that are antagonistic towards L. Ron Hubbard? That was a question I never understood because I'm like 6 years old. And like, do you know anyone antagonistic against L. Ron Hubbard? And I'm like, I don't even know anyone that fucking knows who L. Ron Hubbard is. I didn't say that, of course, but it was just such a
Right.
surreal
Yeah.
thing. And yeah, growing up in Scientology with a heavy, hardcore upbringing, but also having to go to the public school system and experience normal life, it was very weird. It's like I was living two worlds, like half of my mind in this surreal David Miscavige, hip hip hooray, we're saving the planet. And I forget if I told you, but like in 2001 after 9/11, um, I was engaged to a Muslim man from Afghanistan. I forget if I told you this story. He was like 26 and I think
I
I was
think
20.
so, yeah. I do remember you telling me, but I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it was just on the phone.
And it was
Yeah.
so funny because I remember going to an event because after 9/11, David Miscavige pushed the whole volunteer minister thing. And my
Mhm.
mother was very involved in that and was like, I'm going to be a volunteer minister. And pretty much a volunteer minister is you learn assists. And in my mind, and after seeing 9/11, you have like body parts blown up. I don't think peel my finger is really going to help someone that's a bombing
Yeah.
victim.
Ugh, yeah.
Finger and your arm is missing. Like, what good is that going to do? So, my boyfriend at the time, he got political asylum out here. And I remember David Miscavige bragging, and he's like, we are the planetary disseminator. Just the words he says are so just, oh my God, horribly corny. But he was talking about Dianetics and how it had been translated into like 18 languages. And Farsi was one of them. And that's the language my boyfriend or my fiance at the time spoke.
Hmm.
Just like, hey, you have you ever heard of Dianetics? And he was like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, I went to this thing today, and this David Miscavige guy is saying that Dianetics is like the number one most read book in Afghanistan. And, you're thinking
Really?
Taliban. I doubt the Taliban is rushing to go read
Right.
Dianetics. But he just was like laughing. And so I would experience things like that, him in the real world. And then David Miscavige saying something like totally different. And I grew up like that. Like, it's funny when I think about it. You live in a universe with this cult leader blowing you a line of smoke, telling you all this stuff that's not happening. And then you see the real world. And I personally don't know how anyone can in Scientology listen to David Miscavige and take what he says seriously. It's That's been my thing, honestly. Um, so I don't know. It's a very strange cult. I don't know what's going to happen to it. And when David Miscavige, if he passes, something tells me he's going to be alive for a very long time. I don't know
Really?
what, but I can see him living to be like, like George Soros, the tinfoil. So you know how George Soros is like 96 or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
For David Miscavige, because he's like,
Oh God. Hope not.
I can picture him
Only the
living.
good die young. All right. I don't know.
I think
Yeah.
he's been around a long time, unfortunately.
Well, I'm sure he gets really good health care and everything else that other Sea Org members don't get. You know. But so I I'm not even gonna like ask you to comment on all of this. Maybe you can do some videos because these are some people that people want to know about. We've got people talking about Jeffrey Augustine, Jerry Armstrong. We've talked about him a little bit. Alonzo, I don't really know who that is. I know Doug, had some issues with him, but those are some names. Then we've got Paralyze. Just want to pop up the super chat. The e-meter is an electro brain stimulation device and is applied in a dangerous fashion by Scientology auditing. Because there was a discussion in the chat about whether any auditing is beneficial or not. And
Hmm.
from what I know, like I don't know if you know Mark Turi, he used to do like the old fashioned Dianetics auditing without an e-meter. And he said basically is hypnosis. So hypnosis can be useful, but it can also be, you know, harmful and dangerous. So I don't know, but
Hmm.
I think I'm with you though. I think that I don't Scientology, the practices don't seem that good, and it's been used for more harm than good. So
I
I
think
wouldn't
it's
get into
also,
it.
I've never been hypnotized, so I don't know. But I do think that auditing as a child, because your brain and your
Yeah.
feelings are forming,
Mhm.
um, definitely not good for children, and I am proof of that. It screwed me
I
up a
agree.
lot. I mean, honestly, I think I will probably have lifetime repercussions of just having so much auditing done to me from the time I was like 5 years old. Um, and I know, and that's why I don't mind talking about it. It did.
Mhm.
It some damage to me, big time.
I believe it.
Um,
Yeah.
so like, what was the other part? Oh yeah, just if you're an adult and you find auditing and mental capacities, your brain is fully functioning and everything, and you get auditing, power to you, man. I mean, some
Yeah.
people have auditing
I like it.
and they
Mhm.
say that like erases all of their charge and their emotional baggage that they have. And if that's the case, hey, right
Yeah.
on, I guess. It's
Yep.
not like that.
Consenting
So,
adults, yeah, whatever they wanna believe in. They wanna believe in Xenu, all that, and I'm not making fun of them because I believed in my own crazy shit, but I was, for lack of a better word, groomed as a child into it, and then, I was primed just to join a full-blown, destructive cult, but yeah, I think it really did alter my thinking too because, as you know, I had a lot of trauma, um, I've been resistant to some treatments because going there in my mind has been really difficult, and I've had a lot of night terrors my entire life, and it didn't help to be told that if I didn't, measure up and do God's will, that as a fire victim, I would burn in hell forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, you know? So I was always terrified, and I never
yeah.
could be a good Christian in that way. I got to always put a disclaimer because I get tons of messages. You're picking on Christians. I'm not picking on mainstream Christians. And again, people can believe whatever they want. But I think sitting a kid in front of a scary movie at 9, 10 years old, where people are getting their heads chopped off because they didn't take the mark of the beast and they were going to go to hell and burn forever and ever and ever. When I'm looking down at my third-degree burn scars and scared to death and I can't sleep for a week, I think that's traumatizing and not
Oh,
giving me
yeah.
any mental health care being thrown on the doorstep of a foster home with 10 kids, and I'm just hop in the van and go to church. No, nothing, like no counseling. I was a mess. I mean, I I was a mess. Was pulling my hair out. I was wetting the bed. I was a fucking mess. And you know what? It was like Jesus will heal. Jesus will heal everything, you know?
Wow.
Just like
How old?
LRH, everything. They didn't really believe in if you got counseling, it was Christian counseling. And I never even got that. Yeah.
How
So,
old
not to
were
make you feel I don't want to get you upset, but it's just yeah, I can relate to that. Is like that's why I'm really passionate about talking about this, talking about the harm to kids. You know, really, supporting what Serge says. I usually I lurk a lot when he's talking and I don't like I cry a lot when he's talking, but I'm really listening and I will fight for his right and all of your rights to tell your story. If you tell it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, go for it because I've heard all the Seas orc stories over and over again. So you guys have a right to talk about your things and these are pertinent. These are things that are really important if we're going to bring this cult down, you know, to talk about the abuses. So I just wanted to hold space for you all.
No, thank you. And gosh, you're like, I think you've just been a miracle. And for me, you've helped me out a lot. And like, how old were you until you stopped going to foster?
Say that again.
Or
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. How
like,
old
if you
was
were
I when I
when you stopped, I guess, going to like foster care homes, how old were you?
well, I aged out of the foster system. So what happened was, really briefly, when my mom passed away when I was 5, I was in the hospital for 2 months and then it says in the newspaper clippings, Marilyn, Briggs remains in the 5 years old, remains in the hospital while authorities determine where she will live is what it says, pretty much word for word. And so I ended up being pretty much just tossed around and relatives, friends of relatives, couch hopping until I was almost 9. And finally, DCF, or whatever they called it back then, DSS, stepped in and put me in a foster home with 900 other children. They were Pentecostals and I, lived with them. That when I was falling through the cracks before I was 9, a lot of abuse happened. I usually kind of skip over that. I'm not really ready to talk about that whole, terror nightmare. But
Totally.
the
And
foster home had its own issues and it was rough, but my parents tried. My mom was really like what they call born on the pew. So she was like a fanatic, kind of like the people that are really into LRH like that. That's how she was about Jesus and about all this. And she we couldn't do anything. We couldn't go to movies, dances, music, TV, pretty much nothing. And so I rebelled. And when I was 16, I ran away and I ended up in a home for like troubled teens for a few weeks, ended up in foster care, then aged out of the system. Ended up homeless and then joined the cult at 20. And that's pretty much in a nutshell.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, no wonder I feel and some of us feel such a strong bond with you because, girl, you've been through like some, oh my God, some tough stuff. And to see you here and still have a smile and just so, I don't know, like brightening people up. Like, I mean, honestly, you are very, I forget, I don't know what to call you, but you are like a miracle person.
Yeah,
A
and so are
miracle.
you. You all are. I mean, I understand. It's like, I don't compare the trauma. That's why in some ways I didn't really want to talk about a lot of it until I felt really comfortable and got to know people's because I didn't want to be like, oh, that's the lady that, has a really screwed up life. And I've just been sharing little bits and pieces at a time. But like with Kelly, she was my first friend in the space and I told her a little bit of my story. And then I talked to Poe on the go and I really felt a bond with him. And then it was months before I really shared anything else until Doug. And he just treated me with such respect and gentleness and humor and patience. And so I was able to show, the newspaper clippings and my early trauma and then talk about, it was 4 hours. It was two parts. And, he was just so kind and, he asked me and I said yes and we talked. And I got some shit about it. But I was like, he asked me, and he's a good friend, and he was patient, and he was interested, you know? So, yeah,
I think
so
that's
that's what
why, like,
happened.
he asked a lot of questions. I really, and I'm kind of the same way. Like, I just
Yeah,
find other people's lifestyle. I'm like, well, what about this? And like,
yeah.
so, gosh, well, I mean, thank you so much, and thank you for helping us. And if there's anything we can do to help you, man, my door's always open
Wow,
24
you've done I know,
seven.
I talk to you in the middle of the night when I'm having a tough time, you know? If it wasn't for sorry, I'm getting emotional. If it wasn't for, like, people like you and Kelly and the Lizzes, yeah, I don't think I could be here. So I appreciate your support and I appreciate you letting me just, babble to you in the middle of the night. Appreciate
It's
that.
not bad. I mean, you are amazing, and so is Kelly. Even though I haven't talked to Kelly lately, but like all of you, Cricket, Kelly, all of us, I just think we could be a powerhouse of um change. Well, I think it is. Things are different now, and the whole cult community. It's not like how it was before, but in this whole thing, and I think I heard Aaron talk about it, where we've always been taught to not talk badly about each other, to keep things muffled and to hide it. And like, that's not healthy at all. When you're
Yeah,
mad at someone or something, man, let it out. Like, it's healthy to express yourself.
yeah,
Scientology is where you're told not to express things. I think last night when my sister was crying after her son's death, my little nephew, we had all these people, the OSA and people from the Phoenix org, like crowding around her and patting her and hugging her. And, her name is Nikki. And they were just like, Nikki, please stop. You're getting so banky. Like, please stop crying. And, that's what we are told in Scientology. We are told not to express ourselves. And I just disagree with that so
yeah,
much. Because
absolutely.
it's very culty. It's just cult-like thinking.
Hmm.
And you're not supposed to have emotions in Scientology. You're supposed to just be numb, basically, and
Hmm.
not experience things like love and affection. And, it takes a long time to get out of that. I would say it took me a solid decade.
Mm,
And even though
that's
I
not
haven't
uncommon. Hmm. Yeah,
haven't done
that's
anything in 22 years, but took me about 10 years to finally start feeling emotions of like empathy and love. And I probably would have been married one or two times by now if I was able to properly love my fiancés. We would end up breaking up because they would tell me, like, Marisa, you are just the most cold person, unemotional person. And I was, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
it took some time to get that. And I think I still struggle with that a little bit. So it does. You have to take it day by day. And hopefully we will all be, oh no, normal
Yeah, well, I don't
joy.
think you're cold and unemotional at all. I mean, I'm super emotional, but I'm an ex-Pentecostal, we're emotional. But we had our own we had our own thing of oppression, especially in the cult. It was like you had to, just empty your mind, let Jesus take you over and do God's will, which was Marlene's will, the cult's will, but also this thing about, submission. So when I have, anybody trying to handle me in this space, telling me to be discreet, that that thing rises up in me and I'm just like, "Oh, hell no." Sorry, I'm not gonna be discreet, because we were told to be discreet, cover we didn't have to physically cover our heads, but have a gentle, quiet spirit, be submissive to your husbands, work at home, raise your children, and shut up, and I'm not gonna shut up. I tell everybody, I tell all my people here, never shut up. I tell all the second gens, never shut up. We're just gonna get louder. My husband commented the other day, he's like, "You tell Marilyn to shut up, she'll just get louder." So he knows. He knows. So I just want to read a
So
couple more comments, and well, we're at 2 hours again. It's awesome. It's
I know
okay.
I could
We'll have
do
to.
this. Like I told you, remember, I was like, let's just shoot for 45 minutes this time. There goes that idea.
It's all right. We got a lot of participation. This is great. Cynthia Weisinger, thank you for the super chat. Stop generational cult abuse. Yes. Some need meds to aid in recovery. Some take time to accept help, but respect individuals' personal journey, excluding children who need guidance. Getting help is okay. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I love my parents, and I talk to a psychiatrist once a month. It's through WebEx because he started, because of the COVID lockdowns and stuff. He stopped seeing patients during the lockdowns, and ever since then he's just been like WebEx only. When I'm on the phone with him, and then like my mom kind of knows about it, and she will, man. She'll throw pop shots at me still. She'll be like, "Oh, you talking to that shrink of yours?" And well, and then, my dad, because I'm helping to take care of him, he found um some of my meds, and he'll like make joke, like if we are kind of fighting or, having a disagreement with each other, he'll be like, "Oh, why don't you go in your room and take some of that Prozac of yours?" And I guess it really infuriates me because I know that they do not believe mental illness. And I could tell that my parents are struggling very badly. I mean, they're in their 70s, they have health
Mm,
conditions. I've tried telling them to go get mental help and maybe get on some meds, and no, man, they won't do it at all. They, but I agree with that last commenter. Getting help,
mhm.
there's nothing wrong with getting help. And I think for those of us that are Scientologists, it is hard for us because we were told for so long, like, not to get help, and that the people that say they are our helpers are actually the bad guys. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's not true. I don't think it's true at all. Getting help is good. Talking to people, whether it's your friend or a therapist, letting your feelings out, your emotions and your experience out. I think it's very
Yeah.
cathartic. It's helped me quite a bit.
I've had, I don't know about what the difference between therapy and counseling, but I've had individual counseling, marriage counseling, family counseling, and I don't think, I want to remove the shame from that because even, in in my Christian circle, it was like, "Oh, there's something wrong with you, you're not letting Jesus, heal you," you know? It wasn't it was kind of frowned on. It wasn't forbidden, but it was frowned on. And I think we need to remove, the shame and, yeah, we're who we are, and I feel like this has been therapeutic. This has been very cathartic for me, and there's times when, I need to take days off. May I may take tomorrow off because, yeah, you need some time to regroup, but it has been therapeutic to talk about it and to make friends in this space that kinda understand where, I came from. Even though we came from different cults, it is very similar. It really is. So, and I got a
Agree.
couple more
I do.
comments. I've got tons of them, but we'll have to do a part 3. Kim White, thank you for the super chat. Marilyn, thank you for having Marisa on. Love her video. She tells it like it is. 2 strong women right here. Yes,
Oh,
you know.
I appreciate it. Oh, sorry, I'm just reading. I'm magnifying this. Is she absolutely? Oh, Marilyn. I'm sorry,
Oh, you're a good
Marilyn.
Christian. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I
Good
was
is
like, yeah,
not a fair description of your redemptive effect. Thank you so much. Oh, this one. Uh, Thank you for having Marisa on. Love her video. She tells it like it is. 2 strong women right here. That's what she said.
thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Power Lies to Paralyze. Thank you, everybody. And people want to do one more Xenu Marlene, but before I put that up, I just want to put up your banner, which I forgot to do. If anyone is not yet subscribed to at
Oh,
Dianetics with 2 N's, please hop over there and subscribe because you won't be disappointed. That's for sure. I look forward to all of your videos. I really do because
thank
you
you.
speak the straight facts. It's usually 20 minutes or so, and I'm there for it. And Doug was too. One night you dropped a video in the middle of one of our conversations, and he's like, "Can I call you right back? I'll put it on high speed. I got to see what Marisa said." And I said, "Yeah, me too." So we listened to it, and then he
Oh,
called me back and we talked about it. It was great.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it
So,
was he and I both experienced the same ostracization, or I
mhm,
would say the same. We were ostracized by the same people,
yeah.
as going on today. We
Yeah,
were
and I'm not
ostracized.
about that. I'm not about that, and I'm so glad you came on with me, and I find that the people that are, quote, "ostracized" are some of my very favorite people. So that's
They're missing
absolutely
a lot of stories. I think that the big ones that are wanting to keep the narrative and the story, they want to keep this narrative that Scientology, the anti-Scientology movement is nothing about, all it's about is Tom Cruise stories and Xenu and,
Mhm,
celebrity stuff. And um, it's really, you know, taking away from the brunt of how evil Scientology is and why we really are here. We're here to fight. Scientology, all in all, I think is like one of, if not the most toxic belief systems that there are because of what
mhm,
they do with children.
yeah,
It's very abusive and it's absolutely horrible. There's no privacy. It takes away that whole privacy of your life where not even your mind is private. Like it's it's just really
yeah,
bad, and
that's a good
I hope
point.
something's done about it
Yeah,
sooner or later. And I hope more people like Lara, Serge, Nora is awesome, Liz,
mhm,
people that are vocal, that can tell their abuse stories. And I'm going to start getting more into my stories, but again, like it's been like 22 years, and I'm 45, going back to my stories of being audited from like 5 to like 15. Yeah, I got to kind of dig a little bit and like really kind of just remember and go back to that time. All I know is they were not good times of my life. So,
mhm, yeah,
but yeah, what you are seeing is hopefully a revolution where the tides are turning, and there are
yeah,
currently in the background that are upset, that are trying to, spread a lot of rumors about good people and keep the status quo going as far as what we have seen for the last 20 years.
Absolutely. So, can we end with a Xenu Marlene because people are asking?
Oh, sure.
It always makes me think of Doug. So, everybody partake?
Oh goodness, I'll grab a little sip of beer. That's a cool name. Like, I mean, not that I'd ever have a cool, like, another child, but that's kind of a cool name, like Xenu Marlene, you know?
You're gonna if you had another child, you'd name it Xenu Marlene?
I don't know, maybe, or maybe like, because I'm a cat person. That sounds like a cool name. Like if you have a purebred animal, you know how they
Yeah.
have cool names, like at the Westminster Dog Club or
Mhm.
whatever. Xenu Marlene. That just sounds like a cool thoroughbred name of something.
Yeah.
I
You
don't know.
you got some more, comments and, super chats. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to split this with you or give you this one's for you. Marisa, your story is important. Super
Thank
Pop.
you.
Yes, thank you, Super Pop. And then we got Ann Casillas. Um, Never stop talking, Marilyn and Marisa. The world needs your voices. Don't burn them biscuits. That's right.
Ooh,
Don't
won't
burn
be.
our biscuits.
Yeah, I won't for sure.
Yeah, there's a cruise that Cricket is you've heard how
Oh,
she's
I
organizing. I wish you could come. It'd be really
um
fun.
when is it again? In like 2 months?
September. It's in September.
Oh, that's my birthday. September 15th
It's
or something.
yeah, it's the I think it's the 21st through the 28th or 9th.
Oh
I
my
can't
God, my
remember.
birthday's the 20th. Oh my goodness.
Really? Yeah, we'll
I
give
would
you the Cricket can give
see.
you the information if you wanna check it out. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, I
Yeah,
will. I
so
didn't know it was September. That would be a good birthday present. And I've only been on one cruise in my entire life. So
Cricket's saying, "Come on the cruise, Marisa."
I'll have to
That
get in
would
touch
be
with you, girl, so you could send me the information.
yes.
Now, off of Florida, right? You're doing the kind of Bahama
From
thing. Is that what?
Miami. Yep. Yep,
Oh,
and there's some really good deals, food's included and all that. Yeah, we'll talk about it. Yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, everybody, thank you so much. If we didn't get to your question or comment, I really apologize. We had so many, and, definitely subscribe to Marisa at Dianetics, and, you can always do you have an email address? Do you have people that
I
email
do,
you, or
but honestly, I don't like. Okay, I use
it's not
Facebook a
public? Okay.
ton, but you can find me on Facebook. My name
Okay.
is Marisa. My last name is Sigmund, like Sigmund Freud, but it's with an O. So
Mhm.
Sigmond. I would say find me there. If there's something you want to tell me privately, you can send me a DM because I have had a few people ask me for my email, and
Mhm.
most of them have ended up being a little bit sketchy and
Okay.
kind of strange. One thing I've known about there really are, as I've said, cult groupies, like people that are fanatically obsessed with us. I mean, you
Mhm.
get Jeffrey Dahmer fans, like people that are just coop like out there, and they'll send you emails that are just very kind of disturbing and weird. So I guess I'd rather
Okay.
deal on on
Right.
Facebook.
And you can also leave comments in, this video, and I'll pass them to Marisa, and subscribe to her channel and leave some comments on her videos. So, all right, everyone, have a great night.
You
We'll see
too.
you
Be
soon.
careful.
Bye.
You guys don't drink
Thank
too
you.
many new Marlenes.
That's right. All right. Good night, everybody.